one of my leaflets has been delivered in the Colinton and Fairmilehead ward has got to one of the councillors, the Labour councillor Scott Arthur, and he's decided to respond to it on Facebook. So here's a picture of his Facebook post. He obviously couldn't bring himself to reveal the actual message on the leaflet. He didn't want people seeing that, did he? He wanted people to just get his impression he was making of what the leaflet was all about. So he replied with 4 points. So, Councillor Scott, if you're watching, you might find this interesting. I'd be happy to discuss any of it with you. I think that's a pretty remote possibility. But anyway, I'm here and waiting if you would like to have a chat. Anyway, point number 1 that he makes. Everyone is equal in my ward, rainbow flag. Right, how do you respond to that? Well, my response is, I just don't know what you mean. Doesn't make any sense. I can't see anything in family party policies or anything that remotely relates to saying people are not equal. I just don't get that. But it sounds like an accusation, doesn't it? You'd assume reading that there must be something in these leaflets that says people are not equal. It says these are the important people, these are the less important people. These are the valuable people, these are the people we don't care about. These are the people who need to be excluded from life in this ward or whatever. I mean, it's just a bit bizarre. But that's the impression it gives. But what he's basing that on, I've really got no idea, so I can't begin to respond to it. One thing I could say, though, in reply, is to ask the councillor whether or not he regards unborn lives as equal within what he calls his ward. I know what the answer is. He's a supporter of the Labour Party. So the answer is no. He thinks unborn lives can be disposed of at will. But everyone's equal in the ward. Yep, I completely agree with him. It's point number 2. Being a parent is the hardest job in the world. Well, I think that's a quote from Barack Obama. One of his speechwriters came up with that. Well, being a parent is a great responsibility. It requires a lot of investment of various types, and it involves its challenges. Is it the hardest job in the world? Well, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it can be a challenge, that's for sure. But being a single parent is twice as hard. Now, we will leave aside for a moment the logic of whether a job can be twice as hard as the hardest job in the world. But leaving that aside, is it difficult being a single parent? The answer is yes. I think that's a massive challenge. I think the way things ought to be is that the parents are a team of 2, a mum and a dad. That's the way it ought to be. That's the ideal. And when it's just one of the parents, that's really not ideal, and that's really tough for them. So how do we respond to them? Well, the way we respond is they might need a bit of extra help. I mean, personally, a single parent that we knew, we tried to help out by looking after their kids every other weekend. They came on holiday with us. So yeah, people are single parents, they're having a tough time, they've got a big challenge, so we can try to help and support. But also, if being a single parent is so difficult, we're inclined to say, well, what can we do to bring about the situation where there are not as many single parents, where those people are instead bringing up their children as a mum and dad team, which, according to the councillor, seems to be what he thinks is much easier. Whereas his attitude is being a single parent is really, really hard, but who cares? Let's just have lots of them. We're not going to even consider policies that are going to make that less likely in someone's life experience. Now you can see what he's doing, can't you? He's after votes. If you're a single parent, then you know you're great. Don't let him tell you that you're a really bad parent. Don't let him be horrible to you. Okay? He's just after the votes. What he doesn't care about is the life outcomes for the adults or for the children. But that's what I am concerned about, and that's why, as the Scottish Family Party, we promote marriage, and we promote the ideal of a mum and dad bringing up their own kids. Okay, things don't always work out like that, but that's what the ideal is, and if the government can bring about more families like that, more intact natural families, that's going to be better for everyone. Just worth mentioning at this point, these things he's talking about, this is based on a tiny fragment of the leaflet. The vast majority of the points made in our leaflet, he's completely ignoring. Right, number 3, the councillor says you don't have to be married or heterosexual to be great parents. Well, let's look at the first one. You don't have to be married to be a great parent. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. But the way that being married helps parents is it tends to result in them actually being there in the family home to be the parent. So it's not a matter of quality of parenting. It's a matter of whether the parent is actually going to be there in the family home or not. And the present parents, 2 parents living in the family home with the children, which we regard as the ideal. That's much more likely where the parents get married, which is why we want to look at ways to encourage marriage, to develop a culture of marriage in order to enhance the outcomes for adults and particularly for children. Now, he also says you don't have to be heterosexual to be a great parent. Well, let's think about that. Can a gay man be a great dad? Very possibly. But he can't be a mum. And children ideally need a mum and a dad. Also, children ideally should be brought up by their natural parents, so their sense of identity. Where did I come from? Who am I? Well, the answer is you're the offspring of your mum and dad who are bringing you up. I know that's not always possible, but that's the ideal. So can homosexual people be great parents? Their individual parenting skills might be great, but overall, a homosexual relationship can't offer what children ideally need, which is being brought up by their biological mother and father. Right, point number 4, from the Labour Party councillor. Sex education needs to be fit for today's world, not the 1950s. Now, part of what we put through people's doors was the What Are They Teaching Our Children leaflet. So he's looked at this, and his response is to say that sex education needs to be fit for today's world, not the 1950s. So let's see what he means by fit for today's world. Sex education fit for today's world. This is what he thinks that means. Graphic depictions of genitalia and overly detailed descriptions of sex are unnecessary at this stage. He says no. He says that's trying to go back to the 1950s. 5-year-olds are too young to begin to understand sexuality and LGBT issues in any meaningful sense, yet children are expected to endorse all types of sexual relationships and family structures. A film shows 2 young boys falling in love. LGBT campaigning slogans and symbols such as the rainbow flag feature prominently, introducing children into LGBT political activism. The Labour Party councillor defines that as sex education to fit today's world. Let's see what else he thinks is appropriate in today's world. Underage illegal sex is presented as a perfectly valid choice. In fact, the pupils are taught that they have a right to it. Varied sexual practices are endorsed, such as anal and oral sex, including rimming, licking the anus. A video of a banana dipping into Nutella depicts anal sex. Bondage is referred to approvingly, as are sex toys. Masturbation is promoted and pornography use is presented as perfectly normal. Remember, if you disagree with this, you're from the 1950s. Okay, right. And in terms of gender, in primary and secondary school, changing gender is endorsed as a normal, natural and healthy choice. This leads more children to question their gender, leading to confusion. Teachers are instructed to never question a child's wish to change gender, name or pronouns. Even if a child has changed name and gender at school, the school will not inform parents unless the child gives permission. Parents who seek to steer their children away from changing gender are classed as unsupportive. So, as far as this Labour Party council is concerned, there's nothing there that needs to be debated. There are no valid points there. That's just trying to go back to the 1950s. Again, I mean, how do you even start a debate with someone that's not even offering any intelligent response to what's being said? So yeah, he's completely failed to engage with any of the points actually made in the leaflet. The point that struck me here is what we're dealing with the Labour Party. It was basically dealing with the SNP, but without the independence bit. It's as simple as that. Now, in my ward, there's one Labour councillor currently, this gentleman, then there's 2 Conservatives as well. What's the Conservatives' points of view on these issues? Well, basically, when we're talking about the Conservatives, who knows? Maybe one of them secretly agrees. I don't know. Maybe one of them thinks the same as Labour or the SNP. Who knows? Maybe they just don't care. Anything from easy life, just go with the flow, advance your career, you keep on getting your salary as a councillor or whatever. I mean, who knows? I've just got no idea what they think. Because it's the Conservative Party. And that's not a party founded on clear principles. At the Scottish Family Party, our principles are front and centre and open, and we do exactly what it says on the tin. Now, in the comments section below this Facebook post from the councillor, there's all sorts of insult and outrage. And you look at that, and you can see why a lot of people back down in the face of that. But not us, because our message is too important, and it's simply the truth. So we will continue to present it, including in Colinton and Fairmilehead.